All right, good evening, everybody. I would like to welcome you. My name is Anthony Silic, and I would like to welcome you all to my presentation on depression in adolescents and exercise as a means of potentially treating this. I would especially like to thank Robert J. Powell Jr. of the Carol and Robert J. Powell Jr. Charitable Trust. For those of you that don't know, that charitable trust is a nonprofit organization stationed in Freehold, New Jersey that specializes in public health. And Robert J. Powell Jr. has taken an interest in this project, and I would like to especially thank him for attending tonight. So tonight's agenda, the main discussion is depression in adolescents, specifically here at Manalapan High School, and exercise as a means of treating depression in these individuals. Examples of where exercise has been used as treatment include wheelchair rugby, Elkington et al., which was a study, and another study by Carter et al. And then we will also be discussing the plan itself and the price. So what is depression? I would like to give a quick introduction to this. Depression is essentially, it's a mental disorder that's characterized by feelings of hopelessness, grief, loss, and thoughts of death or suicide. And about 6.7% of adults are currently living with this, and most of them started developing the symptoms of their advanced depression that they have as adults prior to the age of 15. About 4 to 5% of individuals in mid to late adolescence struggle with depression. So this would mean there are 452 freshmen here at Manalapan High School. About 23 are currently suffering with depression, which I could imagine perhaps to some of you may seem like a small number, but to me, and I feel like to many parents or just a lot of you out there, this number, no matter how small it may seem, is unacceptable. So I would like to talk about the roots and causes, of which there are 3 I would like to discuss today. The first is the cognitive triad, so we will go to that now. So the cognitive triad is essentially, it's a theory that ties in these 3 elements, as you can see here, and it's essentially 3 forms of thinking that are typically associated with depression. And those 3 are a negative view of the self, a negative view of the world, and a negative view of the future. And as you can see by this graphic here, they are connected. It's not just one negative view of the self going to negative view of the world and there's no connections between the 2. The 3 interact with each other. So essentially, one example would be, say that you view yourself as inadequate and helpless. Then you would view the world in a defeatist way, as if it's against you. And then on top of that, you would also be seeing the future as hopeless due to those 2 prior, points in the cognitive triad working in tangent with each other. Now I would like to go and talk about bullying, which I can imagine is quite personal to some of you and is, local considering that we are talking about high school. So about 77% of adolescents admit to being bullied. This would mean 384 out of the 452 freshmen currently enrolled here at Manalapan High School are being bullied. Unacceptable. There are 2 types of bullying. Traditional, which is verbal, like insults. Physical, which involves, fights or beatings or anything of that nature. And relational, which is, say, cliques. Intentionally isolating people from a group. And then the latter one, which is relatively new, is cyberbullying, which occurs entirely on the internet, on social media platforms. Typically, bullies will target the easily intimidated and those physically weaker than themselves. So a treatment for depression possibly would have to target these individuals specifically. So bullying and depression, let's look at the relationship. There was a study conducted by the Avon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children, otherwise known as ALSPAC, on 7,005 children, detailing the effects of sibling bullying. So 3,452 submitted data on psychiatric effects of sibling bullying by the age of 18. This has been going on since they were born, the study. About 1,642 were victims of sibling bullying. 115 had depression in this clinically significant range. 169 experienced anxiety, and 138 had committed self-harm at least once. As you can see by this graph, if you need a visual, the second largest quadrant is of those that had attempted self-harm at least once. The largest are those suffering from anxiety, and the smallest are those that are suffering from depression. But it is shocking, due to the source of the bullying. This is somebody that is supposed to love the individual that they are currently attempting to hurt. And I can speak from experience. This happened to me. I was being bullied both at school and at home by my sibling. And it is something that nobody should experience. And there is a sort of feeling of being trapped that I could imagine that numerous students here at the school could be experiencing, especially when you consider that the numbers could be just as tragic here, because some bullying cases may not even be reported. So now we're going to move on to obesity. So 40% of people, all people, are overweight, with 13% of that 40% being obese. Depression rates in obese individuals is higher than in those considered to be healthy, about 23%, whereas in healthy weight individuals, it's considered to be about 12%. The relationship between obesity and depression can be either way. So it can either be from depression to obesity or obesity to depression. And about 80% of studies suggest the obesity to depression route, which, if you go back to bullying, this could possibly tie into fat shaming or being picked on because of how heavy you are or your size. And that could lead to depression. So there was a study conducted by Triad et al. Who took 986 adolescents between the ages of 11 to 15. So this is around the age group that I would like to focus on, which are the freshmen here at the school. They found that the rate of elevated depression was 13% higher in those lacking in cardiorespiratory fitness, and 6% higher in those with a large body mass index. So obese individuals and those that are out of shape, or those that are not in good health. And what this means for the freshmen here at Manalapan, 181 out of the 452 freshmen are overweight, with 24 being obese. That's a nearly 1-to-1 ratio with the amount of students that are depressed. So now I would like to talk about the examples of where exercise has succeeded as a treatment of depression. So first I would like to talk about wheelchair rugby, which is a Paralympic sport which consists of 2 teams in wheelchairs on a basketball court, 2 teams of 4. And so Farmeniuk et al. Was a study conducted that took 40 individuals suffering from spinal cord injuries and split them into 2 groups. And this was conducted over a period of 2 years. So the beginning of the study, over a period of 2 weeks, the 2 groups both played wheelchair rugby. But after those 2 weeks, one group would consistently play wheelchair rugby and the other group would not. And then at the end of the 2 years, there was a skills test involving the 2 groups. And this involves skills such as unfolding your wheelchair or dismounting your wheelchair into another wheelchair, picking up objects, etc. And the group that participated in wheelchair rugby had a 24% improvement rate. So the physical benefits of playing wheelchair rugby are there, but what about the psychological benefits? So for that we turn to Licht et al., who conducted a psychological study of the sport. Those who play have an increase in psychosocial well-being as well as finding personal meaning in playing a contact sport. And this can come from encouragement from teammates, coaches, and spectators. So if we go back to the cognitive triad, where the view of the self is a big part in depressive thinking, that's one part of the cognitive triad that becomes more positive because you're receiving a positive feedback from the world around you and the individuals around you, so from the world. And that would improve the feeling that you have of yourself personally. So the next study I would like to cite is Elkington et al., who conducted a series of studies on the effects of resistance training and aerobics, or cardio, on 2,187 depressed individuals. I want to talk about cardio specifically with Elkington, because it seemed to be the most successful. 28 out of the 37 studies that were cardio exclusive showed a 1% to 67% increase in psychological well-being in the participants. The last study I would like to talk about is Carter et al. And he focused specifically on adolescents with depression. It consists of resistance-based exercises, so like your weight training, medicine ball exercises, anything involving a weight, cardio, and stretching. This occurred twice a week for 6 weeks. And the results were almost universally positive. And to demonstrate, they interviewed members of the study, and I would like to just read off a few of their quotes. Because I knew it was other people in the same boat, it was all to do with mental health. I just felt like they would respect me and they wouldn't look out for bad things about me. They would look out for the good things. Yeah, I felt that I had achieved something. And then you feel better about yourself and want to do other stuff after that. And you feel better because you think you can do it. And lastly, it made me feel a bit healthier because I've not done anything in ages, and just doing that made me feel more confident. So the first part of the plan will consist of the big three of bodybuilding, which are meant to build strength. So the big three of bodybuilding are squats, deadlifting, and bench press. These three workouts release the most testosterone, which coincides in a boost in confidence, aggression, muscle growth, and competition. And so on top of this, students will be encouraged to have spotters due to the weight being pushed, which will most likely be more than they weigh at some point. And this will encourage bonding between the participants, so it will allow them to make friends. Part 2 is cardio, due to the success of Elkington et al.'s study on cardio. And cardio will consist of cycling and running. And students will be required to keep journals that will be issued to them at the beginning of the study, where they will detail weight being pushed, heart rate, distance covered, etc. And these journals will be checked at the start of each session to make sure that they are keeping a log and keeping track of their progress. The final part of the plan is sporting activities. The program will be 5 days a week. 1 day will be totally dedicated to sports. And these sports will be ones that require the students to be moving around constantly. So nothing like kickball. It will be things such as soccer and field hockey. And this will not require any additional funding, as the school has sports fields and equipment, and the recreational center next door is totally open to the public. So any sports fields that the school does not have, the rec center is right there, and you could just walk right there and the students will be able to participate there. And this will further encourage bonding between the students through team-based activities. So how about the budget? As you can see, it's somewhat unbalanced, and that is due to, on the days where students will be lifting weights and doing cardio, a physical trainer will be present. And on the day where students will be playing sports, a physical education teacher will be present, and overtime will not be required as this is occurring during their physical education period. So a physical trainer costs roughly $70 an hour, and this will be occurring 4 days a week. The only other part of the budget are marble notebooks, which according to OfficeDepot.com cost $1.99 a piece. So the majority of the budget is the physical trainer, and this little sliver here are the marble notebooks. So the total cost for this one school year is $10,125.77. So our final rallying call. These are the freshmen at Manalapan High School. They need your help. These are our future, these young people. And under the mental strain of depression, these young minds will not be able to reach their full potential. And that, I feel like, is the most tragic thing of all. Physical activity in the form of aerobics, weight training, and sports have been shown to have numerous psychological and physical benefits to people that have participated in them, myself included. And these young people could be experiencing those benefits, as opposed to taking things like antidepressant medication, which have inadvertent side effects. So I would like to thank you all for your time, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me or call me by phone. I would like to thank you all for coming, especially Robert J. Powell Jr., and you all have a good night.